Today I'm going to show you guys how to relocate your fuel filter in a 2005 Subaru WRX. This is useful for if you're replacing your fuel pump. The fuel filter on these cars is in the tank, so it's nice to be able to put it in the engine bay where you can get to it easier and replace it easier. First thing you're going to do is pull this washer bottle by removing these two bolts, and then you're going to try and get off this bracket using those two bolts. The fuel filter is going to replace this fuel post-pulsation dampener on the top line off the intake manifold. You're just going to replace that with this. You can get one of these fuel filters for a 2003 WRX and it will be a direct fit. With that tank out, you can see these bolts you need to remove, and I think this clips on to that. You got to remove that too because we're going to be taking this whole bracket out. You're going to want to get a fuel filter holder bracket from an 03 WRX. It should fit here. The little clip here at the bottom has a little nub that goes in that hole, so you got to get underneath with like a screwdriver, push it up, and then you can slide it off. This just clips into this little bracket, and then it's two, looks like 10mm bolts to get that off. Don't worry about removing or getting rid of this pulsation dampener because the fuel filter will dampen the pulses plenty. That bracket's actually two pieces, so we're actually going to put the bottom half of this back on so that our wiring harness is secure. So next we're going to remove this by undoing these two clamps. Some fuel might leak out, so do this when the engine's cold, or depressurize the fuel pump by pulling the fuel pump relay and starting the car. That'll work. So you're going to be replacing this with this. It's hard to see, but this filter has in and out. Make sure that that's going the correct direction. This out should be towards the fuel rail. It's going to go in, out. So with your fuel filter in, you want to turn the key, start the car, prime it, make sure everything's good and nothing's leaking. Next, put your washer tank back in, and next we're going to change the fuel pump and pull out the filter there. This is the fuel pump you're going to want. It's a Walbro GSS 342. This is a 255 liter per hour pump. It's a very common high pressure fuel pump, and you're going to want some new fuel line, probably about a foot will do. The fuel pump is located under the rear seats, so next we need to remove those. There are these little caps over these things under the back seat. Pop them off and then unbolt these. There's one on each side. Just pull up after you do those two, and the seat will come out, and that will reveal the bolts that hold the rest of the seat in. Pull those out and then pull off these seat backs. Once you've got that seat back off, you're going to need to take off this little rubber like sound insulation mat, just a couple of clips. With that out of the way, under this carpet is your fuel tank cover. So undo that and you can see the fuel pump. Alright. Now you're going to want to start undoing these connections. Be careful because these are fuel lines. Take off your gas cap to relieve the pressure in the tank. Alright, so these fittings do have a little bit of fuel in them, so be prepared for that. I think this compartment opens to under the car, but still you want to be careful and leave your windows open, don't smoke around the car. Next you're going to undo all these bolts around the perimeter. All of these nuts are 8mm. With all those bolts off, nuts off, you can lift this up, and you're going to have to angle it and twist it to get it out because there's some dangly bits in there, but make sure you don't bend the fuel level sensor. So this is the fuel pump hanger assembly. This is the fuel filter you're going to be replacing with a piece of hose straight from here to there. You don't have to replace your fuel pump, but they're only like 50 bucks. We're going to be reusing this fuel strainer because it's got this plastic skeleton that stops it from getting sucked in when you use a better fuel pump. I've heard disaster stories about that. And this is the fuel level sensor. This little float tells your car what the fuel level is. Make sure you don't bend this or your gas gauge will be off. So next, we're gonna take this thing out and the pump. So this fuel filter used to go here. You're just gonna replace it with this piece of fuel hose, and then the one in your engine bay is gonna work the way this one did, and it's a lot simpler. So next you want to replace this gasket with a new one. They're only a couple bucks. It'll stop any fuel smells from coming in your car. The torque spec on these bolts is only like 3 foot-pounds, so don't crank them down super tight. Just make sure all your connections are good. Make sure you slide that hose clamp back up. Make sure you don't bend anything putting this back in. But then just put the rest of the car back together and you should be good to start up. I would start the car up without this cap on, just so you can make sure that everything's working okay. Thanks for watching.